USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Week in Review podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. A look at this weekend in college hockey and a review of the top news of the week.
Welcome to Weekend Review for October 4th, 2021, back for our fourth season. Are yours truly, Ed Trefzger, and my co-host, Jim Connelly. But, Jim, you have another co-host to introduce who's going to be joining us this season.
Yeah, you know, sometimes there are losses in college hockey, and obviously what happened with Robert Morris this year and the fact that they're not playing is a huge loss for college hockey. But fortunately, it's our game because Derek Schooley, their head coach and a good friend of the show, a good friend of USCHO, he has agreed to join us this season as a co-host for Weekend Review. And I know that this will liven the show up a lot because he has a ton more to say than you and I typically would. So this will be something I know we're going to enjoy. So Schools, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm excited to be here, guys. I wish I would have been coaching this past weekend, but I guess this is the next best thing. And I'm excited to dive into the world of media and be on the other side of the microphone for once and ask questions of coaches, get some insight. And I'm going to state right now that I am going to donate my salary from this podcast to the Save RMU Hockey is the Goal campaign. So that will be my my big donation to the cause.
One that's very much appreciated, I'm sure, by everybody that's involved in your organization. So Ed, let's jump right into it.
Well, one thing that all of us on the media side and on the coaching side, I'm sure also noticed this weekend was the absence of collegehockeystats.net. It ended its operation at the end of last season, and it really meant a difficulty finding scores in boxes Saturday and Sunday this weekend. I know various websites are trying to scramble to make the new data feed work. Really, you don't even know what you've got till it's gone. But boy, what a great resource that's disappeared. What is this meant to have that lost?
I mean, 2 decades of great stat work by a guy named Tim Danahy. Nobody outside of maybe the inner circles of college hockey really realized who he was or what he did to keep up that site. And then share the stat data in a way that was understandable with, media sites, with schools, with leagues. He did so much work, and we saw it this weekend. It was frustrating. There was points on Saturday night that I was trying to write stories for the front page of USCHO, and I couldn't even tell who scored goals. And this is on all of us because the NCAA has basically allowed a company called Genius, and I don't want to take anything too much away from them, but Genius is going to do all stats for all NCAA sports, but they're now just feeding data. And I can't say that they're experts at hockey. They're learning on the fly, and they're feeding data to all the media partners, to the leagues. There was no accuracy at all at the early part of Sunday night. And I'm talking, when I say early, I'm talking into a Saturday night into Sunday morning. It was midnight, 1:00, and box scores were still incorrect. And I know it's just going to take some time. I know that our owner, Tim Bruley, has been working ridiculously long hours on the back end, trying to get our stats up, our live boxes up, our standings up. But, we've come, 2 days after games are done. Now, I think it was this morning, I woke up to an email. Hey, you have a game that was an exhibition marked as a real game and it's counting in standings. What are you doing? And that's going to be the pain that everybody's going to go through. And it really revealed itself. I know, Derek, you and I talked late on Saturday night. It was frustrating.
Yeah, it was. And as somebody who has been on the other side as a coach, you rely on that so much. You rely on that for your scouting reports, to see lines, to see matchups. Now you got to scour through Twitter to hopefully find a team posting a line chart. Knowing what's going on in other buildings is key for coaches. And obviously, as we discussed, it was challenging. It was challenging to find going through individual schools' websites to find live stats that may not even been there as well. So I never Tim is a really good guy. He's unbelievably worked with our NCAA championship committee the last couple of years on the pairwise and different things like that. And I think we realize how much we miss him now. And hopefully we get this, this problem get rectified sooner than later, because we're lost. And it was challenging. It was a challenge. You had to scroll Twitter. If you weren't following them, you had to Google. I mean, like you said, was it an exhibition game? What were the lines? Who was playing in goal? I'm trying to follow all my former players. And, it was, like I said, it was a difficult weekend. And I said that I sent out a tweet on the weekend that said how much we miss college hockey stats. And I opened up a can of worms a little bit, because then everybody jumped on the bandwagon with it. And I guess it's the old saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Certainly was the case. And, I mean, I was looking for sports ticker on Saturday night. That's how desperate I was. Anybody that would just provide me the correct score, because there were sites that had games that were in the second period listed as final and had the score at the end of one. I mean, there's obviously a disconnect. And I hope that the NCAA will realize that there is a problem, and kind of force the hand of genius to maybe work more closely with all of the partners. That there are, but you now have, whereas one point you had college hockey stats as kind of the central repository, you now have every league, every media outlet that wants to track stats. You have College Hockey Inc. in the same page. All of these places that take stats and track it and build data infrastructure around it. Every one of these organizations has to build their own data structure. That's what's frustrating, and it's not going to fix itself quick. We understand that, no matter how many hours you put behind it. Until games get played, you can't see mistakes. But right now, as you said, Derek, it's not sustainable.
Well, you know what? And Ed, before Ed, you jump to another subject, we got to get what was that radio station in Houghton? Way back when, the score line that you have to call in for scores.
Yeah.
they're gonna get they're gonna get everything going.
Their
back
business
again.
is back together.
Dial in for the score line in Houghton, the radio station in Houghton.
I was actually reminiscing about that a couple of weeks ago at a radio conference, and the guy sitting next to me at the conference, turns out he was a longtime radio guy at Northern Michigan and remembers that. So that was a good conversation.
We're back.
I know myself on Saturday night, I had a whole bunch of browser tabs open to every school site trying to keep up, and it was difficult. But there was some great action over the weekend, and probably the premier matchup that was on everybody's schedule was the pair of games at UMass with Minnesota State visiting. UMass came in as number one in the USCHO poll, which is pretty typical for a defending national champion. But UMass got swept on the weekend, and Derek, what does this say about UMass? What's this say about Minnesota State?
It says that obviously Minnesota State's an older team, and they were prepared. They wanted to make a mark right off the bat. And Mike Hastings is a really good coach. I thought I had them in the finals for sure last year when we were in Pittsburgh. Obviously, Dryden McKay. I mean, how many more shutouts can he get? I mean, we're getting close to ridiculous numbers and records and all that kind of stuff. But it's tough. What does it say? It says it was the first weekend. I don't think you read too much into it. I know Greg Carvel has done an outstanding job there, and he's gonna say, hey, it's the first weekend. We learned a lot about our team. We got to play real games. We realized what we got to work on, and big challenge right out of the gate. And really, I think the one thing that coaches look for early, whether it's an exhibition game or a first game, is to put things on video, to be able to correct mistakes, to be able to play against a different opponent. You're tired of beating each other up in practice. You're tired of doing that. And you want to be able to show video of a team counteracting some stuff that you've done. So I think teams will use this. Any team that played this weekend will use this to their advantage and be able to go out and make adjustments and make changes and make themselves better. And, I would imagine there's going to be a new number one when it comes out later today. But, I wouldn't read too much into where it is and what it goes. Nobody wins the national championship in the first weekend.
Certainly, the one thing you could note maybe is how much UMass did lose on their defensive core. Because, when that team was rolling down the stretch last year into the Hockey East Championship, winning that through the regionals and then through the Frozen Four, the big part was how solid that defense was and not allowing solid chances and really possessing the puck and transitioning it well. That seemed to be what UMass struggled with this weekend. Grossly outshot both games. Saturday's game started balancing out by the end of the contest, but I think they had one shot in the first period on Saturday and
8 shots through 2 periods
and 8 shots through 2. I mean, that's not gonna. There's a little national championship hangover too, I'm sure, but I don't, like you said, I don't think that Greg Carville is sitting there pressing a panic button. It's 2 games into a season against a very good opponent when there were a ton of distractions, and I think that is what we'll realize. I think Greg can take out of this weekend.
Another matchup that was on people's calendar, on one hand, because it had number 2 St. Cloud State in the series, but on the other hand, the debut of St. Thomas as a Division I program. A tough weekend for the Tommies, but they're probably off to a good start because they've had the advantage of being able to bring in some transfers as well as some recruits. And Derek, when you started the Robert Morris program, you didn't have the kind of free agency that there is now. What kind of an advantage is that for Rico in getting that program going?
Oh, it's huge. We're in a completely different landscape than when we started in 2004. And hopefully I will be dealing with this landscape in April and May to try to rebuild a program. But I think what you're looking at is you're looking at an older veteran team that is trying to be an old veteran team, but all in a new school. So you're trying to mix these parts together of guys who have played different systems, played different things, know the college hockey game, and mix it into your team. They got a good staff there in Rico and Leon Hayward, and they got my old hockey ops guy Josh Johnson's there as well. And I was texting him back and forth about it, and obviously St. Cloud was hot. They struggled with the big sheet of St. Cloud, and they made sure and they took too many penalties and in game 1, but they were better in game 2 and made St. Cloud work a little bit harder. I got a former player on St. Cloud, so I was watching kind of that game a little bit as yesterday provided, and went on. And I think that you're going to see St. Cloud get better. Once again, they were able to put some stuff on video and go from there. And they got big conference opener next week in St. Thomas.
What an explosive power play St. Cloud has. We learned that 8 for 13 on the weekend, 7 for 10 on Saturday night in the 12-2 win. If you're going to be playing that team this year, stay out of the box. And we saw it down the stretch. I thought that their power play, when you go back to the regionals last year, was, really carried that team, and they were able to score some big goals with special teams. And their penalty kill was excellent, much of the end of last year. And obviously that carried into the first weekend as well.
Shorthanded goals too. They had a shorthanded goal. Throw that in there, and that's a dangerous special teams unit.
Speaking of special teams, Jim, you noted it was an exhibition with Bowling Green, but Michigan had what could be an NHL All-Star power play playing on the weekend.
Okay, let's see. Owen Power was at the top. Kent Johnson was on the left side. Brendan Brisson on the right. You had Matty Beniers in front, and you had Thomas Bordelot playing the bumper right in the middle. I mean, that's scary. I mean, Derek, you're a team going into Ann Arbor some night. Especially if you've got some young players out there, and you're looking at it. What is Ed just kind of put like an all-star team power play. This is the lowest drafted player in there, I think, is Bordelot, who was 38. So you've got 4 first rounders and a second rounder comprising your top power play unit. I guess the consistency is one thing that you have to worry about, but you're not going to have to worry about being able to move the puck.
No, they were throwing that around. I thought I saw a tweet that they were the Harlem Globetrotters of college hockey. Behind the back, through the legs, over. It was impressive to watch. You also got to remember, once again, one of the last things you're implementing in your systems going in is special teams. So you're throwing out 5 guys who are being very creative against a young Bowling Green team because they were really old last year and lost a lot of those guys in the transfer portal, where you're just teaching your special teams. And that's a little bit. And then they run into 5 skilled guys like that. I mean, like I said, behind the back, through the legs. If you can find that tweet online, for everybody listening out there, go look at that, because it is impressive. And I said they probably just give those guys freedom, give those 5 players freedom to give them a structure and let them make plays, and they did.
Yeah, I think the one thing that Mel Pearson is, and he talked to me a little bit about it the end of last year, continuously learning, is you put more high-end talent. And I know he's coached a ton of high-end talent, whether it was an assistant at Michigan or at Michigan Tech, and now being back as the head coach at Michigan. And he's seen these players go through. And I always say that there is a challenge when you have some really good players. Every coach would love a bunch of first rounders, but if you have to have a first rounder that maybe you have to throw down onto the third line to balance things out, these kids aren't used to playing the third line in their whole career. So that is one of the challenges. But I think Mel I think he's one of the better coaches in the country. And then you add in the fact that he's learning more and more how to really deal with a little bit egos, but a little bit of understanding these guys have talent. Just let them go. Don't get in their way.
That's like the National Development Program. There's only one puck on the ice, so they got to make sure there's enough touches for everybody. And they always said the old saying, the best team that gets off the bus usually wins. And obviously, the Michigan's got the best team right now. Number 1 in some polls. They might be number 1 again this week. But I think that you put talent on that. You've got to find enough touches for everybody.
This is going to be Arizona State's final season at Oceanside. A couple of good games there this past weekend. We'll look at that when Weekend Review continues.
This is the USCHO Weekend Review podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online.
This is USCHO Weekend Review. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. A split this weekend as UMass-Lowell traveled to Arizona State.
Yeah, good series. I mean, 2 competitive games. Lowell carried the play, you would say, for most of the weekend, but Saturday night they got into some penalty trouble. They had a really strange situation where it was a 2-2 game. They scored a goal to make it 3-2, but the referee missed it, and they had to go to video review, gave the goal. About a minute later, it looked like Lowell scored again. Now, I'm watching it on, a small monitor and, not the best video quality. I'm sure that's even the video review officials would have that. But it looked like Lowell took a 4-2 lead. The referee misses it again. They let them play on. Arizona State goes down, makes it 3-3. And then there was never a video review of that moment. And I don't know if everything just got lost in the Arizona State goal. But from there, I thought the Sun Devils played really good hockey in the third period. They took advantage of a major penalty that was called late and scored a couple of power play goals. They end up with the win. And then Sunday, I thought that Lowell, again, had some good run and was starting to control the game. But Arizona State's plucky. And I think that, you mentioned Oceanside. That is a great building for them to play in. It's a horrible building if you're the opponent having to play there. I always call it a youth hockey arena because that's kind of what the feel is. But you generate a really good atmosphere in there, and it's they get some momentum going. They seem to build off it. I think that is one kind of signature about this team, this Arizona State team, since it started. When they're at home, they're a tough team when you see them getting momentum going. They held in, and then Lowell finally was able to hold on Sunday to get the split. But real good competitive series right out of the gate, Derek.
Yeah, we went there two years ago in January, and the distractions there are plenty. I mean, you go and it's 90 degrees out. You go to a place where there's a pool. You got the sun, the time change. We went there during the Waste Management Open.
Oh.
I mean, there's just so much going on there. And it is a tough place to play. I spent some time there this summer with Greg Powers because our daughters were played on the same summer team, and they've got that building. They know the nooks and crannies of that building, and Greg really believes that this could be his best team. And quote that he gave me will tell you all you need to know about the Lowell is, and I'm going to read this word for word. I knew they'd be good, but they were probably the most physical and heavy team we've ever played. That was his quote. And you think about it, he played in the Big Ten last year. He played a Big Ten schedule. I mean, that says a lot about a Lowell team. So interesting weekend to watch Arizona State play and their last year at Oceanside.
Well, it was a weekend where fans finally were able to get back into the building for the first time since probably February 2020 in most places. I know I was at RIT on Saturday, 3,200 in that building. And not only is it a great thing for fans, but for players, there are freshmen and sophomores who've never played in front of some of these atmospheres. So it had to be excited for them. But 12,000 at Ralph Engelstad, 84-12 at UMass, just terrific crowds and almost getting back to normal. I mean, Derek, you have played in a smaller arena, but when that arena, Robert Morris, has been packed and the band is there and the fans, that can be an intimidating place for fans. And it's got to be a real energy boost for a team just to have that atmosphere back.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. The band, that's college hockey. Getting the band there, getting the fans in the stands. Like you said, it's tough that there's some players that haven't played in front of crowds. And to see the crowds, the turnout at North Dakota, to see the turnout at UMass and RIT. When we played at RIT last year, you miss the corner crew. And you hate them when they're there, but you miss them when they're not. But that's college hockey. And that's what makes this game so fun and exciting. And to see the students in the jerseys and I love the whiteboards that a lot of teams are using where they can change their signs. And Brandon Denham was a favorite of the corner crew when we were there for 4 years. And to be able to have people boo you now and be and cheer you is exciting for the players and the coaches. That's for sure.
Saturday night, I went over to Boston University for an exhibition game against Holy Cross, and not a big crowd in the building. They played in Walter Brown, but as I was walking in the front door of Walter Brown to grab a credential, it was like this strange sound that I hadn't heard, and it was the band. And the band was in there playing, 30 minutes before puck drop, and it's just like, that's the sound we've missed. College hockey has some real distinct features. One is the band, and some is, obviously some of the cheers and stuff like that. But when you hear that sound after just missing it for so long, there was nothing stranger last year than calling games inside empty arenas and pucks going in the net and nobody cheers or nobody boos or nobody reacts. It was a very strange atmosphere. So even, I'm at a game that probably, I don't know what they announced, maybe had about 800 to 1,000 fans in it. That was wonderful. Any fans in the stands was wonderful. So I can't even imagine what it was like out at Mullen Center or out at Engelstad Arena with those big crowds this weekend.
I think I heard Ed's broadcast last year with his booth being over the RIT bench. I think I could hear him talking while the game was going on. That's how quiet it was. So I almost wanted to yell up to tell him to keep it down a little bit. That was the atmosphere we were dealing with last year.
Yeah, it definitely was. Now, part of the weekend included a lot of exhibition games, D1 opponents versus D1 opponents, and even a future D1 program in Lindenwood playing. This was something done because of COVID. Is this something that teams might look to do going forward? And what does that do for teams also that schedule their exhibition kind of mid-semester, semester break rather, kind of as a tune-up going back into the second semester?
All the calls that I was on before with all the committees, and that's something the coaches have wanted. I think that to get Canadian teams to come down, sometimes you have to spend a lot of money in guarantees. Sometimes the games aren't competitive. So there's no repercussions for them if they get chippy. You have to be really disciplined and make sure, because if you get in a fight, you have to sit out the next game. If they get in a fight, you don't. So this is something that the coaches have wanted. I think it's outstanding to be able to play a local team. You look at, like you said, Holy Cross playing BU, AIC playing Boston College. And then hopefully you reciprocate. Next year, hopefully BC goes to AIC and vice versa. So you can have some different teams. you can also see yourself on a peer level, not playing a Canadian school where you got 3 kids that played major junior, 5 kids that were in the East Coast League. I mean, this was big, and hopefully it does continue. I know the coaches wanted it to start because it was actually passed last year. Just nobody could do it because of the timing, and nobody played really out of conference games. So it's a neat thing.
Yeah, every coach I talked to, Derek, echoed kind of your sentiments, especially about the physical play. For a lot of these Canadian schools, and I'm not trying to put down the Canadian university hockey. It's there's some very competitive programs up there, but for most of them, this is their Stanley Cup, this is their Super Bowl. They think that beating, playing Boston College, or UMass or North Dakota is like, for one thing, you could be playing the defending national champion in many of those situations, and you get behind in that game and you're frustrated, then you start taking runs. And so it's, obviously you talked about the repercussions, but the injuries that I've seen in some of these games too, because the physical play and kids kind of the emotions getting out of control. It's just too dangerous and it's too risky. Not that, I mentioned I saw the Holy Cross BU game, just as physical as any other regular season game. It wasn't like anybody was going around and making it look like a 3-on-3 NHL All-Star game. And I mean, there was physical play, but I just don't feel like there is. I think both teams have skin in the game so that they know that if anything goes wrong, then they're liable to the NCAA, whereas the Canadian schools never had that issue.
Yeah, there were times when we would play Canadian schools, and we played one in Johnstown a couple of years ago, that I would have to sit some of my players not because of fear of injury, fear of something happening, a fight, check from behind, and you don't want to lose them for real games. And there's no repercussions for them, and for the Canadian schools, so they come down and, like you said, they get behind or they get ahead. I mean, it ended up being there's really no winning, no reason to play the game. You could use an inter squad scrimmage. So we're excited to be able to throw that back. Get the college games playing, and who knows, maybe you start playing some club teams. That would potentially help boost some programs to maybe go to the Division I level. See, you saw Lindenwood play. I mean, you might see Illinois play down the road. That could be really beneficial to growing the game of college hockey.
On the note of the Canadian teams and fights and so forth, it took me back down memory lane to the late 90s when RIT was a D3 program and played Ryerson. And RIT's athletic director stopped the game in the third period when the assistant coach from Ryerson started fighting with somebody in the stands. So,
it happens.
And we played in Johnstown, not you.
Well, that's all we had on the rundown for today's episode, but we got to ask you, Derek, how does it feel? I know you'd rather be behind the bench, but how is it to be behind the microphone?
You guys tell me. I don't know. It's I'm in it like a rookie. I'm a freshman here on my first media event. You tell me how I did. I enjoy it. I always enjoy talking. You guys know that.
The fact that you don't have a lack of words always will help you in the broadcast media. And so, great debut. We appreciate having you. I can't wait for the next 25 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm excited, guys. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for today's edition of Weekend Review. For Jim Connelly, for Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Weekend Review Podcast, a production of US College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.